Welcome back to Website and TV. I'm Gemma Houghton. Today I'm joined by Joseph Harper, who's the UK and Ireland social lead for Kellogg's. And we're going to be talking about building a brand on social and use of social media channels. So, hi Joseph, thank you for being here.
A pleasure, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So firstly, how important is social as a channel and as a concept for Kellogg's?
Massively important. It's become sort of the foundation of pretty much every market activation and brand activation that we do. We have some huge brands within our portfolio, and they're all, social is really at the heart, as I say, of everything that we do. Our audiences are all really engaged on all the channels, and particularly in the food industry, it's become synonymous, really. The uploading and sharing of recipes and food preferences and dietary preferences, nutritional profiles, has become pretty much the core of what everyone uses social media for, and we're very aware of our place in those conversations, and to be part of them is hugely important for building the brands, but also for communicating with our consumers on a daily basis around the changes and the updates and the availability of our products. But I think equally and almost in some ways more importantly, the main benefit that we get from social media is listening to our consumers, listening to the trends and conversations that occur around our brands and around our products is hugely important. And we've, particularly in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, which has really seen this boom of social media with sites such as Instagram and Snapchat, we're more than we're very, very aware of the importance that it has to play in the way that we market our products and that we grow our brands.
So how much of social media activity can be planned and is, campaigns, for example, planned in advance and worked on, and how much of it is really about, in the here and now and responding to what's going on at that moment?
Yes, it's a good question. I suppose you sort of take it as it comes in one respect. We do obviously have overarching brand initiatives and campaigns that we're working on across all the channels, so in store with our customers and European-wide, as well as sort of more specific local UK activations. And they will be sort of obviously much more thought through. We are very conscious of the channels that we're using and that we're working on, and the different types of activation that we want to run. But yeah, equally, opportunities will arise. The word that we don't like to use so often, which is viral. We have the Pringles brand in our portfolio, which is, in my opinion, one of the strongest brands that you can activate with on social media, so recognisable around the world and so well established. And opportunities are constantly arising where, high-profile individuals will mention or engage with our products, and we have to be really sort of wary of that. And so, whilst we will often plan sort of months in advance big campaigns around our brands, equally opportunities will arise, and then it's about being reactive and quickly seizing the opportunity to engage. How do we leverage this opportunity, harness the conversation around our brands, and subsequently sort of take our place in that conversation?
Which is why you say the listening is so important. It's a conversation, but also if somebody does mention the brand, you have to be there to capitalise on it, and I guess in some cases manage any issues that might occur with it. But it's really about always being aware of what's going on. And
absolutely, and you can never really, particularly with how many brands we have in our portfolio, you can never be too prepared and too sort of close to the conversations. That's one of the elements of my job, that there's no sort of, like I said, there's no maximum to the amount of listening that you can do. Our Pringles, hashtag Pringles, will receive hundreds of mentions a day on Instagram. Cocoa Pops and Frosties, are really well-established brands with great heritage, are constantly being discussed, used. We will get very positive feedback. Obviously, we'll get sort of more CRM sort of consumer issues, which we need to manage, conversations that are occurring, which are really important to the brand teams, taking on board that feedback and sort of and utilising it and responding and reacting where we can.
So then you mentioned that Kellogg's does have lots of brands. It's very synonymous for many people with cereal and things, but Pringles and other brands which are also very well known and different and will have slightly varying audiences. So how do you manage that with, you've got various social channels? How do you make sure that you can target each customer, each type of customer?
It's again, it's sort of, we do sort of measure all of the brands and the conversations that are occurring across all the brands on all the channels. But we're certainly aware that different products that we've got in our portfolio will be sort of more discussed on different channels. So the more visual foods, obviously, and the, again, coming back to Pringles, the very visual packaging, we're very conscious that they will receive more engagement perhaps on Instagram than perhaps some more core foods. And so you do sort of measure it and manage it to scale. But, at the same time, I guess we're sort of, we're always keeping our ears to the ground on all of the channels. In terms of how we manage our content and the conversations, I think one of the most important things, certainly from my point of view, is in terms of tone of voice.
Yeah.
So we have a target consumer for each of the brands. For a lot of our cereal products, our breakfast foods, we obviously are aware that we target mums as the shopper.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our outbound content will be considering that message of nutrition and of availability and of changes to the products that we're making, new ranges. And in that respect, I suppose, Facebook and that target audience of mums, whilst in terms of generations, we are becoming more sort of accepting and highly, we're using all of the channels, I think sort of in the next sort of 30 to 40 years, you'll find that most generations have access and are regularly using all of the social channels that we see today. Whilst it's still developing into this sort of huge beast that it's become, we do find, like I say, that mums will be mostly active on Facebook, and so we might consider Facebook as the key channel to communicate our messages regarding our cereal portfolio. Whereas with Pringles, we know that our key demographic is what we call a social connector. So snacking occasions, sporting events in the house,
group picnics or group
trips
out,
groups of friends, groups of acquaintances, festivals, and so naturally, for example, using the example of sporting occasions, we know that obviously sports discussion is very high on Twitter, and so we're very keen to sort of tap into those conversations and engage those audiences in the territories that they play. It's at the core and it's the foundation of pretty much everything that we do.
Yeah, so it's very important to really look at the channels and not just think, oh, Instagram's popular, let's go there. Really look at, well, who's using it and what they're using it for, and not just trying to get on the bandwagon without really having something to get on with.
That's right, yeah, and that's very much the early stages of planning for an overarching campaign. Choosing the channels effectively in terms of not just the brand but also the activity. So what are we communicating? Why? Who do we want to hear? Who do we want to talk to? Do we want people to talk to us about it, or do we just want to hit people with a message? Being effective in those ways of communicating is really key. And I suppose coming back to your original point around how we sort of ensure that each piece of activity is suiting for the brand and the audience, as I said, the tone of voice is really, really important. So not just the channels and who you're speaking to, but the way you speak to them as well. So the language, anything down to sort of colloquialism. How much information you include about the product itself, maybe even the price and the availability, like I say. But also, with Pringles, we know that our language can be a little more sort of relaxed and sociable. Crave, which is one of our what we call teen brands, we would be conscious that we're often speaking to teenagers, young influencers, and so try and be a little bit very much trying to talk to the consumer. I think for everything we do on social, I always imagine that we're speaking to a group of people, and whilst obviously it's much more wide ranging, you can tell when you look at the content when it's live that
with
it's
that
suitable.
Group actually engage with that and think it's relevant for them.
And it ensures that you don't look out of place as well.
Yeah.
At the same time, don't try too hard with your tone of voice, because there's...
You're not their best friend, so don't try to be.
No, and I think with the UK in particular, one of the things that we've certainly learnt is it can be quite a cynical landscape. Yeah. People are very conscious of brands advertising to them on social. The British audience, the British social audience, are very highly active on social. So in comparison to a lot of the activity that we run across Europe, we find that we get a lot more pushback on UK channels. Questioning our activity, and I see, like I say, being a lot more sceptical and cynical about being hit by adverts. We have to take that into consideration as well. Yeah. And so it's really important, that tone of voice again, to ensure that we are telling people about things that they care about, that they want to know about, and doing it effectively.
And it's also, like you say, being aware that that's what might happen and having a response for that, having a way to deal with that so that you don't end up looking silly or damaging the brand by not being able to respond.
Yeah, and we've learned from, I think, sort of most big organisations will tell you that you learn from experience when a campaign doesn't go so well, or if you get a response that you completely, is completely unexpected. Being prepared, being prepared obviously sort of means that you're not going to fail. So we touch all those bases. We ensure that we've got sort of response guides lined out. And also a really important thing that is consistent across social media is consistency itself. So ensuring that our PR channels are all sort of communicating the same messages, the key messages are at the core of the activity. And also, in store, so we're working with our customers, Tesco's, Asda's and Sainsbury's, where the shopper shops, ensuring that our messages in store are also very consistent. It sticks out like a sore thumb when a brand activates on one product and there's different messages in different channels. Yeah,
it will be picked up upon and consumers will talk about it.
Yeah, and it's good, it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
We're all sort of, you have to imagine what would happen if it does go wrong, and if it does go well. And we're always prepared. It makes us more flexible, more diverse, and it works, hopefully.
Yeah, in most cases. So when you you mentioned there about the different points, the PR, the in-store activity, there'll be many other departments working on different marketing elements as well. How important is it to all really work together and have some overall plan, have some understanding of the message of the brand as a whole? Yeah,
well, I think a good point to make there is in terms of how we manage our social media as an organisation, so it's all in-house. A lot of big organisations will use external agencies to manage one of the two main elements of social media that I like to phrase, which are obviously the marketing side of things, or speaking to the consumers, but also, like I say, the inbound, the CRM. We manage everything in-house. The main reason being that we can keep an eye on all the conversations that are coming in. In terms of collaboration in-house, that really sort of helps nurture that relationship. And so at the heart of all the campaigns that we work on, there are meetings with the PR team, with all the in-store activation, the point of sale, on-pack, and then, like I say as well, the care line side of things, so taking into account what our consumers are contacting us directly through more traditional forms of care line to discuss. And I think sort of success for any brand that activates, particularly in the FMCG industry that we operate in, having that consistency across the board is fundamental, really.
And then you mentioned PR, which I think for many people now, they almost think PR has been replaced by social media. Yeah. Social media is the new PR. But what kind of role does PR, traditional PR, if you were, still play, and how does that sit with social media?
It's a good point. It's a hot topic, I guess. One of the words that we hear mentioned quite a lot we use a lot of agencies for our creative side of things. So whilst the ideas come in-house, generally the production of the assets and the management of media budget is kind of, we use external agencies to help us manage that. One of the words that crops up quite a lot from PR agencies that we work with is Prigital. So it's this, like you said, this blend of PR, social and digital communications. And whilst that is, very much, as you rightly say, the way in which things are nowadays, a lot of activations that are carried out by brands are combined PR and social. Traditional PR still plays a really important role. I think what's important at those early stages of planning is to identify how you want to bring the story to life around the activation. Traditional PR, I think, can play the role of communicating those really key messages, the core messages of the activity. So why we're doing it as an organisation. That's not necessarily a consumer-facing message that we want to communicate via social media. So improvements in food, for example, and why we're doing it, and the trends in the business and in the market, the industry landscape, may be more suitable to being communicated by traditional PR. People want to read more into why we're doing this and what the reason for it is. We don't want to sort of force that on our consumers too much. At the end of the day, they want to know that the food tastes good. They want to know, how they get it and where they get it from. And so traditional PR plays a really important role. And sort of similarly, the social media can have a really important role to play for more traditional PR stories. So what social media gives, I think, is longevity to stories. So PR can very much be a big bang within a 24-hour to a week's period, whereas a social campaign can live across an indefinite time frame, really. And so we put a lot of work into ensuring that campaigns that we're working on, is it suitable for social? Quite often it is, because we can always find a way of bringing a visual element to what we're doing. But yeah, I suppose sort of more importantly on that aspect, what is the PR hook? At the end of the day, you've got to have something about this activity which is going to want to make, it's going to want to make PR agencies and news agencies write about it and talk about it. They're not going to write articles and promote activity which people aren't going to want to read. Yeah. And I think the final point that I'll make in terms of PR and social is nowadays the majority of press and news stories obviously have a strong digital route to them, an online route, so quite often there'll be video hosted within. And one way in which we link up quite a lot between PR and social is in terms of video asset production. So what will be suitable for our news outlets to print and report on, but also can live on our channels. So facing the consumer, but also facing the wider world as this is what Kellogg's or Pringles are doing, but also this is what we're doing for you.
And it ties back to your point about consistency everywhere, that wherever somebody may come into contact with you, because as well, somebody reading that press release may still be a consumer wanting to buy the product.
Exactly.
And they need to have that overall round experience to really...
Yeah, so the messages that you can't be too guarded about the messages across channel. There's nothing that we'd ever say, don't even think about talking about that on social, so it comes back to that care line element of it and the responding to consumers. Quite often we'll go out of an activity, our consumers, they know what's going on. They're used to being hit with these adverts, and they'll quite often come back. The first question that we'll get is the reason that you're doing this activity because you want to make this change, you want to try and exploit this channel? And we don't hide from that, and that's where the response guide comes in. We're all very clear on what we can, we're ready and prepared for the type of response we can get.
Which is very important, because if you are, the second you are guarded, the second you're not transparent is when you will be called out on that. Somebody will say that, and that's where there'll be a big storm about it, and everybody will pick up on it. Whereas actually by saying, well, actually, that is why. Some people don't say, oh, right, is it? They just go, oh, good, right, thank you for telling us that.
Transparency is so important. I think big organisations as Kellogg's is, there are focus groups and areas of the media and also of online forums who are looking for us to make changes to the way in which we produce our food and the way in which we operate effectively. And we have to be, we are very sort of conscious of ensuring that transparency is at the heart of what we do. That we need to believe in our foods and we need to believe in the way in which we work, and we're very, we're happy to communicate that because we do believe in what we do.
And then with measurement with social, because it's obviously much easier than it ever was, it is possible to measure. As long as you know what you're trying to achieve, you can measure that. Are there any particular tools or processes that you use to really help you define the success of campaigns?
Yeah, it can differ from one campaign to another. Obviously, there are several metrics that we use and KPIs that we define in order to measure, like you say, the success and the effectiveness of what we're trying to communicate. Yeah. We use a tool called the Crimson Hexagon sort of software, effectively, which helps us to manage and monitor not only the channels in the inbound content, but also from sort of a more bird's eye view across the course of the campaign. We use several different metrics. I won't go through all of them, but a key one quite often is sentiment. So particularly on brands which have a more challenging sort of landscape in terms of the messages that they're trying to communicate. From a bird's eye view, you can look down and you can say, okay, so the sentiment and the contact that we were receiving, the feedback that we were getting on these on this campaign has changed over this course of time. We see that people are responding better to our adverts and what we're trying to say. That's just one. Obviously, there's more sort of general digital KPIs that we'd use, such as reach and engagement. We work very closely with our agencies, and quite often a lot of our measurement is done on benchmarking. So we compare from campaigns on similar brands. So what we refer to as our master brand, which is the Kellogg's brand.
Yep.
Under that sits a number of our sort of different foods. So, for example, generally your brands like cornflakes and Cocoa Pops would sit under that huge portfolio of our more recognisable Kellogg's brands. Activity that is run through those pages is often contrasted with other pieces that have been run on those pages. You have different organic audiences, should I say? Sorry.
Yeah.
So the master brand page has a certain number of organic fans who we know that we'll reach. That audience will be a different size to the audience that we have on the Crunchy Nut Facebook page, for example. Completely different demographic, and as a result, that's all taken into account. We put a great deal of time and investment into ensuring that what we do is effective.
Yeah.
And we're constantly learning. We take best practices in everything from the language used, the length of the copy, the length of the asset, the times that we activate at, and the audiences that we hit with our media. We're constantly reviewing those decisions that we make and optimizing, as well as a new one that we've started to do. So live assessment, if you like, and reviewing of how content's performing. So we'll have different pieces live at the same time, being supported with similar investments.
Yeah.
And there is a sort of a constant evaluation of what's getting the best reach and the best engagement, and then we will ensure that our investment is channeled down the routes which are the most effective.
So it's it's testing really as well, isn't it? It's testing the different ways of doing it and really looking at those tests and saying, well, what resonates better with our audience? Well,
we want to ensure that the investment that we're making in social and digital is worthy, and there's only I talk so much about the planning that goes into it and trying to preempt the response and reaction. At the end of the day, until the campaign goes live, you don't have you're never too sure of how it's going to be received. And so by trial and error effectively in the live,
you can plan and assume as much before you start, but until you actually take it to those customers, you're not going to know.
And it's effective and it's cost effective to ensure that you are investing in what works. And so there's a lot of focus internally on ensuring that we get the best investment and the best performance for the investment that we make in brands and in different pieces of activity, different products, right the way through the portfolio. It's at the centre of what we do.
Right. Well, thank you very much for sharing loads of great insights there. Thanks.
Anytime.